Recline and Recline. This class is about ecology. And ecology is the study of natural systems, their interdependence and their interrelationships, which is quite different from most sciences that are isolating a particular aspect of ecology, of the natural world, basically. And permaculture is that integrative function in design looking at ecosystems and how we can create the same mirror or implementation of a closed loop system. So if you look into your books, you're going to see our ecological design aims. And one of the ecological design aims is to preserve genetic diversity. So many of the plants that we want to grow, of course, are plants that produce and provide for us. However, a lot of them that we find in the stores are hybridized or sometimes genetically modified. And we're losing the heirloom, the original form of these plants. And a lot of the resiliency in your design is that genetic biodiversity that you're able to implement. So when you are preparing to implement the various forms of ecosystem that you want to generate on your landscape, consider, old, original, native, heirloom, non-hybridized, from seed plants, so that we can continue to expand the genetic diversity. This is one very important key in design. Design ecosystems that maximize the number of productive species. So think of hundreds rather than one or two or three of a particular plant, right? I have a quarter-acre lot that I've been working with in Miami with a friend. She has the house, driveway, and the rest of the space. We have 300 different varieties of plants. So don't limit yourself. Think of, okay, here's the area that I have, and how many things can I put into it? And how can I diversify? And to be honest with you, a lot of what we have there is not nearly as diverse as I would like it to be. It could be significantly more diverse, maybe 1,000 variety of different plants to be planted on this quarter of an acre. Also, use energy and matter efficiently and move towards ecosystem perpetuation, meaning how can I design this in such a way that I don't have to be there and it's still evolving as a closed loop system. A great example is in your book on page 18, figure 3.1. You're going to see a little designed ecosystem where you have the bananas, and the bananas are mulched, and you have the chickens, and those chickens are feeding on the pests for the bananas, also reducing the amount of grasses or other weedy species that might compete with the bananas, and they are consuming the acacia beans and pods as another food source, which in turn the acacia is providing nitrogen fixation for the bananas. And so you have this system where they're all forming a certain interrelationship. And so I want to discuss some of the relationships that we perceive as the unique aspects to an ecosystem, but also very interesting in design. So you have the relationship that is of space. How are plants spaced in such a way that they're all inhabiting the area without competing, or they are all taking up the space in such a way that the space is locked in with the plants that you want? And so I'm here at a botanical gardens, and as you can see, that they really took the time to lock in as much space as possible so that when they're here maintaining and pruning and weeding, it's very minimal, because they've actually limited the amount of space for other plants to grow and maximize the potential of the space. So when you're designing, consider the same things. How can I maximize that potential so that I'm seeing productivity and I'm seeing the ecosystem form and shape on its own eventually as I step out of the system and interact with it with, of course, harvesting, providing food for ourselves, or just limited interaction and you put more time to what you actually want to do.
What I realized when I started taking care of the land here was that the land has an ecosystem, just like we do. We have an inner ecosystem. In fact, if you start studying health, one of the ways to think about health is that our body has the same things that the soil does in it. In fact, we're sort of like trees turned inside out. So a tree would be planted in soil, whereas the soil, we would just be eating sort of the nutrition and extracting in our guts and pooping it out the other end.
So natural ecosystems are known as closed loop systems. And when you have the relationship of a symbiotic form, you're going to start seeing those loops being closed. Because symbiotic relationships are the ones where there is a giving and a receiving that is necessary in order for that ecosystem to thrive. And so you have the ones that we normally discuss, which is the nitrogen fixation symbiotic relationship, where you have the rhizobium root nodules on the plant's root system, and the plants are providing carbon for the bacteria that's on the roots, and the roots are fixating nitrogen from the atmosphere. Yes, there's air in the soil, especially if it's good soil, that is coming from the atmosphere and providing it to the plant. So it gets nitrogen in exchange for photosynthesizing and absorbing carbon from the air and giving that back to the bacteria. So this relationship is symbiotic. We have symbiotic relationships as well, where you have trees that provide fruit, and that fruit is specifically designed and created in a beautiful, colorful, lusciously delicious way for us to consume that and then take that seed and then continue to spread that seed, to plant it and perpetuate the life of that plant. So there's many forms of symbiotic relationships that are an important key element in your designing of your own ecosystem. So consider what that is. Another relationship is a beneficial relationship. So we have these three: symbiotic, spatial, and beneficial. And when you think of beneficial, think of like companion planting. So you have plants that are benefiting one another based on, it could be a spatial relationship, maybe you're just suppressing weed growth. It could be a nutrient relationship, maybe you're chopping and dropping, cutting plants back and feeding it to plants next to it. It could be a relationship of pest management, to where one plant actually attracts beneficial insects so that the other plants have these beneficial insects around and they have less pest problems. Or it could be a relationship of ambiance and beauty. Maybe the benefit is for you, that you're enjoying the space and there's a relationship of you wanting to care and nurture those plants. And so the Botany of Desire is a great documentary that discusses this relationship that plants have created within us to want to engage, to want to cultivate them. And so think of those relationships in nature, including your own, and how you're a part of that.
So like we saw earlier with the tree asters as an insectary plant, or for the hummingbirds, we're often gardening for beneficials and just wildlife in general, and that collaborative sense of the fact that permaculture as a design method is trying to figure out how to do ecological emulation and create conditions conducive for life.
Life is meant to be like a field of flowers, heavenly showers of love, dancing in the wind for hours as the powers above motion me to move within, metals akin to a spectrum of light, a reflection of diversity in colors and heights, like the sun and blue sky shining ever so bright, a radiance to behold and receive in sight, flowing nectars of life, butterflies in delight, sucking sweetness from stems and spreading pollen alike, roots hugging the earth loving the roots, as the soil life brings life to every shoot. Another flower is born, let that flower be you, blooming into your beauty and beginning anew. Functions of a healthy ecosystem are to create and support life, to clean air, to clean water, and sometimes clean up toxins through various forms of natural filtration systems, to regulate the atmosphere through cycling carbon and nitrogen, to build soil together with soil microorganisms, to manage pest and disease, to perpetuate themselves, to create highly integrated structures, and to become closed loop systems. So to have a closed loop system, you know that it's fully integrated, it's not segregated, it's producing no waste, It's maximizing the potential for diversity. It's valuing the edges and the niches. It's doing all the principles at once. A lot of these principles are rooted and understood from the way nature works. And so consider your principles when you're doing your design and creating a closed loop system. Observe and interact. Is it catching and storing energy? Find your way to produce this ecological function, not just on the landscape, but also in your home, in your business, in your educational systems. Look at the metaphorical field of understanding what you can do and how you can improve your life as well as the life that you interact with. Human, animal, any form. Now, in every healthy ecosystem, you will find these three things: a producer, a consumer, and a decomposer. Now, most elements in the ecosystem are interrelating with one or two, or are represented as one or two. So I myself, for example, consume, and I can produce, and there's bacteria and other forms of me that decompose and then offer fertilizer, right, to decompose further. And so I have all of those primary parts. However, when I'm involving myself into the ecosystem, what I'm considering is what do I want to produce, right? Meaning, like, what trees do I want to plant in order for me to be a primary consumer of what the ecosystem is yielding. So obtaining a yield by understanding what are the producers, and then how many producers are necessary in your design so that you can be a relevant consumer and be a part of that closed loop system. So go out into, a park or into your backyard or a natural environment and look for the consumers, right? Which ones are the primary or secondary consumers? Look for the producers, which ones are providing the various forms of food, and the little guys, the decomposers. Normally when you go to a regular farm, you will find that there are some missing components, right? Missing elements. And the one that gets neglected the most is the decomposers. Yes, they are heavily sprayed with chemicals, and the earth is stripped so that the soil is absolutely exposed to the sun and elements, and the bacteria, the fungi, the various protozoa, all the different types of life in the soil gets destroyed. And this is our foundation. And so if we're really serious about wanting to create an ecosystem form of farm, designed permaculturally, we need to really take root in developing our decomposers, that they're thriving, because they're the ones that are cycling back that nutrients and perpetuating the system.
We've already got the two bean parts that we generally eat, where the carbohydrates are stored, but those are the cotyledons that provide that food source, so that when the root grows, it has enough energy before it can send up the shoot and get true leaves to begin to photosynthesize. And you can already begin to see there's little life forms in there, and then these roots will connect with their associated bacteria to then begin to work in collaboration symbiotically with the bacteria that can take atmospheric nitrogen out of the atmosphere and make it into a soluble form for the plant. In exchange, the plant is turning sunlight into sugar. So we've got a sunlight to sugar and bacteria to nitrogen exchange going on, in this case in a fava bean. That's an amazing process of what people call green manures or nitrogen fixing legumes, cover crops.
The succession passes through several stages. These are grass, herbs, tubers, shrubs, nitrogen fixers, trees, climbers, and fungi, and finally, they achieve a forest. Think of plants as nutrient pumps and stores. The pioneer plants are often nitrogen fixers, preparing land for the final dominant species of changing soil and providing protection. In permaculture, an important design aim is to move to stability and maximize the permanence and the species and their interactions over time with minimum disturbance. So why don't all ecosystems end up as forests? Well, the principle is the limiting factors. All living things have needs that have been met. If all needs are not optimally met, then growth is reduced. One design technique is to integrate all of the various factors that meet the needs of each specific species in your ecosystem. So for example, consider how water, soil, weeds, pests, sun and cold affect the growth rates of the particular plants or animals that you have in your system. So as a permaculturist, you want to favor the enhancement of the ecosystem's evolution.
The plans of this life is a dance, yes, sacred romance. You do respect our life is sacred. But the truth is we are co-creating this, co-creating with the mama Gaia, yeah.
Words never sounded so lush. I love the lullaby, liberated and such. In harmonium, feel the warm rush of blood circulating in your cheeks when you blush. So much to praise in this new transition. Change your thoughts, change your life, new vision. Easy mode, I choose to live life simply. Be bold, behold, yo, the cup is half empty, or half full, whichever one you manifest. A handful of givens from my heart rest. Rest assured, tranquility's my inner essence. Effervescence sizzling your soul into presence. Awakening the coil of the kundalini. Seeping up and rising out just like a lamp genie. Hey, if I did this every day, I'd be a lamp genie. But between you and me is possibility of life. Yeah.
Simplicity of life, always simply is divine.
The simplicity of life. Okay, let's see how permaculture becomes ecology and merge these two for you so that you can see that we can live a life of pure sustainability. We have here a home that was designed in South Florida by my good friend Carolina Alzate with Permaculture Americula. And I had did the implementation of the design. Quite a few things have changed as we implemented, but I'd like to go through a few things here that really creates permaculture and ecology merging, seeing closed loop systems as best as we can. So this is a 1/4 acre lot, and this home was designed as a LEED Platinum certified home. That is the highest green building certification that you can get, and it also has Vastu principles in mind as well. So we're thinking about not only how the home is built green, but also how the energy and the flow and the feel of the space is for its inhabitants. And the high energy efficiency was an important part of this LEED Platinum design. So of course there's lots of LED lights and low energy appliances, and of course we have a solar grid above the house, and that feeds into the grid, and so it's on grid, but they have made it so energy efficient that they're actually at a net zero bill as far as their bill is concerned. And so during the day they feed the grid, and at night the grid feeds back to the home. With a little bit of batteries, when there is a power outage, they stay with power, and that's good design. The home has walls that were designed with what's called SIP panels, and these high insulation panels are fantastic for the sense of good insulation for the reduction of energy needs for cooling the home. This is in a subtropical environment, as well as the home is poured concrete between these SIP panels, and with the foundation as well as the walls and the roof being poured, you have a very solid monolithic structure. And in South Florida we get hurricanes, and so this home is not going anywhere. Super solid and ready for disaster. So this is designed for disasters. Also, you have high water efficiency, and so low flush toilets, low flow sinks, gray water systems, and a rain catchment system for the roof where 4,000 gallons of water is caught underground. And so we have a really nice reserve for backup for the drought season. And so when there's drought, there's no doubt we got plenty of water for usage for the home and for the space itself. And you coming outside, you will see that there's a beautiful looking mandala garden. Now this garden, this vegetable garden, what we call Zone 1, we actually turned it into a more simplified keyhole garden. And this keyhole garden is better than just a row garden because you can use maybe a third more of the space by reducing the access to the garden bed itself and maximizing the potential of growth for your annual crops. And so, yeah, we have a beautiful annual crop garden there, and as well as a herb spiral. Herb spirals are quite cool. We talk about that more in later classes, and how we can efficiently grow. There's a whole class on zone 1. Moving to further in the backyard, you see zone 2. And in zone 2, we call our food forest. She has designed it as kind of a shape of a womb. So exiting the home, coming into this food forest, we're coming into the nurturing part of the property that provides an abundance of food. And I'm talking about abundance. There's lychees and mangoes and avocados and jackfruit and sugar apple and white sapote and mame sapote, jabuticaba. There's banana circles and papayas. There's even a drier zone where we have jatropha and pomegranate and dragon fruit and chaya, and just a whole intermix of a forest of food. And of course, underneath that, you have pigeon pea and pineapples and mulberry and sweet potato and katuk and passion fruit, raspberries. There's coconuts in the above story. There's so many things in this very small backyard. So it's amazing what you can do in a back of the home. And all of these is primarily the design, so you have this perennial, forevermore food in your backyard. There's nothing like just walking a few steps out of your house and you're seeing the Garden of Eden right before you. Amazing. And of course, within that Garden of Eden, we want spaces that are celebratory and that are enabling us to enjoy it more than just the food itself. So you see this beautiful pond that is back there and a fire pit for ceremonies, and there's some sitting spaces, and a lot of entertainment is a part of this design so that we can enjoy our spaces fully. There is a alley cropping area. We'd consider this zone 3. This is where we get our bulk foods from, like yucca, malanga, sunflower, jicama, corn, beans, and squash. There is just a prolific amount of food being grown, and that is the focus, right? Food, not yards. This is in a regular suburban area, and when people see this, they get blown away. And the ecology, remember, like I said, has these 3 components, right? The consumer, which is the person living at the home, the producer, look at this abundance of food being produced, and the decomposers. And so all the yard waste and the compost from the home gets cycled back through either a worm bin system that we have there, or the banana circle, which we compost all the waste and yard waste there, or being fed to the chickens, for example, when the chickens are implemented into the design. It is closed. There is cycling of nutrients. Things are being brought together. Other things for the design in the future, and we want to implement it once everything gets mature. We can put bees in there and have hives for honey. Of course, the chickens eventually to reduce the amount of pests, weeds, and give eggs. And we're going to create like a living fence on the edges and trellis most of the fences that are already in place, mushroom cultivation. There is so much that can be produced. In the front, we have a driveway that is actually permeable and has native plants growing in between, so when it rains, water stays in place. There's no runoff on this property. It is caught, stored, synced, and kept on the land. And there's mostly natives in the front, so we have butterfly gardens and we have hummingbird attractors and pollinator attractors there, and lots of native plants, so that we are incorporating the environment, taking care, nurturing the environment, taking care, nurturing us. That's what permaculture is all about. I hope this inspires you. So, my ecological comrades, I really hope you enjoyed these first 4 classes. With ecology, yes, it's a depth of science. However, it's easy. Understand the relationships, understand the cycle that you're in and how you're a part of it, and then you can start making permaculture designs, designing your farm, designing your home, designing your business, all using these ecological functions and applying the ethics and the principles. So we can start caring for the earth, the people, building the abundance that is ours for the taking. And there's so much abundance in so many ways, and there's so much more to learn. This is just the beginning. We have 30 more classes left or so that you can start taking now and actually getting your design certificate. I really want you to come along with me on this journey. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours working on this project and going into different parts of the world, working with people who have been off-grid, living this lifestyle for a long time, designing businesses and becoming resilient because of what they've learned through these classes. We're going to learn about how to do natural building and how to build your own home appropriately. We're going to learn about, of course, how to do organic regenerative gardening and working on the landscape with farming if you want to be a farmer. We're also going to learn about businesses, how to make them more resilient, ethical investment. There's so many different facets to how people design all around the world. We're going to learn about those things as far as it pertains to growing our future together and making a difference on this world. You have the capacity in you to start applying this right now, just from what you've learned in these first 4 classes. These next classes will give you the confidence to actually help others design an intricate design system.